What is going on, YouTube people? Neo here with another special guest, the third of the week. It is guest week here on the channel, I guess. We have Ryan from Breakout Cards. If you are not familiar with his channel, he does a lot of cool vlogs and a lot of fake stuff. Those are your two primary things, right, Ryan?
Those are right now. So every weekend I try to go to a different card show around the country, and I try to build out the vlog either on like a Monday or Tuesday with that. And then on Fridays, I have a series called Spotting Fakes where I show people how to spot different fake cards, mostly vintage because that's where the most counterfeits are. But I'm seeing a lot more new modern stuff as well. So I'm trying to cover both aspects of sides of things.
Yeah, and you how many fake cards have you covered, give or take? It's been quite a few now, right?
Yeah. So right now in my book, I have 50. And I also have more as well that I'm not putting in the first edition. But on the YouTube channel, I probably have like 15 or so.
Nice. And we were talking pre-stream. So how I've came across your content was the vlogs that you do. So essentially, for the last almost what 6 months to a year, you've essentially been like the traveling road show. How many shows have you been to so far? Let's just say this year.
Yeah. So after this weekend, I'm going to be at 28 shows. The following weekend is also the national, so 29. If you're watching this in the future, I ended up going, and then next week is the national, so 29 at the end of July.
Nice. And a lot of the what? How many of those would you say are like legit travel, like not just local to Florida?
Yeah. So every month I try to go to two shows out of state. So some of the shows I go to all the time, such as like Dallas, but others I've only gone to once, like the Wiz Dallas show. So I'd probably say 10 plus is already out of state with that.
And you're essentially like your big shows this year have been all the Dallas shows, the Dells, Atlanta, and then obviously the National and the Des Moines ones coming up.
Along with
Um,
Houston as well. Yeah. And
oh,
then
you
I
were
have,
at Houston too.
yeah. And then I have a
That one
few
always
others.
gets forgotten about. I feel like.
It's the big TriStar show. I mean, I know it's not as like flashy anymore as the Dallas show or the National, but it's still a decent show over there if you want to get signatures.
Yeah, Dallas seems to have like stolen their hype. I know that the Houston show it was well regarded, but it seems like Dallas gets all the love, and that show got kind of forgotten about a little bit. I know Dakota at Sports Cards Anonymous talks about the Houston show quite a bit. So, but yeah, the reason I wanted to have you on is because you were one of the rare people. I know you and the other Ryan, card collector too, happened to do the double header this past weekend and do both Atlanta and Dallas. I watched your vlog on that, and I encourage if anyone watching this video hasn't seen it yet, I'll link to Ryan's channel and probably that video specifically, since that's his latest big release. But I had Sam on yesterday from Women of the Hobby and Dakota on the day before to talk Dallas and Atlanta. So, what was your perspective bouncing from one show to the other?
So yeah, I mean, each show kind of had their own strengths and weaknesses, and they're two completely different shows for two different audiences. And one something I really advocate on my channel is find the show that works best for you. You don't want to go to a show that doesn't have cards that fits in your PC. So when you go to a Dallas show, you know that there's going to be a ton of vendors over there. You really don't expect any events at the show as well. Sure, there's trade night after in the hallways, but the actual card show doesn't put on events for people to go to. It's standard card show, right? There's nothing else going on. But you get a wide variety of dealers. There's people there that are selling baseball cards. There's football, basketball. There's a little bit of hockey, and there's some other miscellaneous sports as well. It's like boxing, which I also PC. So going into that show, you can find a little bit of everything. It's kind of like the national experience, kind of watered down. National, like you literally find everything there. Dallas, you kind of have that vibe with it, and just kind of like your standard local show, but just a lot larger. Now, Atlanta was a lot more of an organized event. They had a lot of things going on. So, for example, I wasn't there on Saturday, but Ryan Card Collector 2 and then Jeff from Sports Card Investors, they ended up doing a pack battle on the main stage. And they also had a lot of other people in the hobby talk about the current state and had a bunch of other sponsors there. Something that Dallas doesn't really have. Might have like one or two main sponsors for an event. But at Atlanta, they had a full room of sponsors and they had the alt there, which are showing off some of their most expensive cards and showcases. I wasn't there to see some of their National Treasures RPAs, but they brought those out on Friday and Saturday, I believe. But then you also had like show your slabs there. So then we also had stand-up displays there. You had both Loop and whatnot, and a few other sponsors there. So they took up a full room, and that's literally the first thing you walk into is the sponsor pavilion before going into a second room with probably about 200 tables. So when comparing also the size of the two different shows, Atlanta was a smaller show compared to Dallas. And what you could find at Atlanta, there's a lot more sellers there that had raw cards or like cheap dollar and $5 boxes compared to Dallas. When you go to a Dallas show, you're expecting a lot more slabs and high end stuff. Now, there's a lot of high end stuff at Atlanta, but it was all modern. There was not really many vintage sellers. There was one seller there that had like a PSA 6, a Ty Cobb redback, not redback, but the red portrait. But that type of stuff is so expensive for someone like me who can't afford the type of cards. There's really no vintage dealers there. And I think that was one of the drawbacks of that show. You need to have a lot more vintage side of things just besides modern, because you don't get the whole target audience with that. Whereas Dallas, you're going to find a lot of vintage dealers there as well as modern. So you kind of hit both sides of that.
And for those that don't know, Ryan, Ryan's big into vintage. That's probably your primary, much more than modern, right?
Yeah, so I'd say probably my collection is 75% vintage, 25% modern. And when I talk about vintage, I collect both something called pre-war and then post-war as well. So war, when you're referring to vintage, is a World War II. So a lot more like tobacco cards and then stuff from the late 1800s. I really, really like that stuff. I'll give you an example of some pre-war that I ended up picking up. So here's 3 cards. I got a Cy Young right here, a T205 from 1911. I also picked up this Benny Leonard, really, really good boxer. And that's going to be kind of hard to see with the lighting over here. And also this Sam Langford boxer. This is from the 1910 Mecha set. You might know the Jack Johnson from that as well.
Yeah,
So
I've
that's
seen
like
that
the
card.
stuff I like seeing, but you don't see any of that at the Atlanta show. It was all modern stuff. But I used that to my advantage because I ended up picking up some modern stuff as well. So I'm huge into Machado. So I picked up this black refractor right here. Also a gold Bowman Chrome autograph. And then a CJ Abrams from 2018. This is number 25. He's
Nice.
hurt right now, and I like Abrams as a prospect. So when I saw his prices go way down, I decided to take a chance at this one. But still feel they're modern as well. But always play to what the show is. You can't go to a show and say, oh, it's only vintage cards, I'm not going to buy anything. Or you can't go to a show and say, oh, only it's modern cards, I'm not going to buy anything. Each show has their strengths and weaknesses. So go around, find some deals, make the opportunities happen.
So Sam had mentioned too that the Atlanta show had a lot more like side event things. Is that the first that you've seen that kind of like blown out to that level? Like other than like what, stuff that the National is going to do, but at a regional show level, having like these sponsored events or panels or live box breaks with content creators or whatever. Have you seen that from a lot of other shows? Because maybe they're doing it, I just haven't heard about it. But it seems like I'm hearing that a lot more from Atlanta.
Yeah, so Wizdell's had their own events as well for like their VIP or MVP members there, but not for like the general public. And also, I know the Iowa show that I'm going to this weekend, they have a dealer specific one and they also have a VIP specific one. They have like a cigar lounge that they rented out, brought in a few players and things like that to hang out with everyone, but not to that level where they have like full on panels like that.
Do you feel like that's an untapped thing? I feel like there would be interest in like maybe I don't know, maybe I'm just looking at this from the content creator side, but like a panel style thing with whatever content creators are there, faces of the hobby or whatever, spin you want to put on it. But I feel like that would be an interesting value add on like a Saturday afternoon or something like, hey, there's going to be a 90-minute panel of like, X, Y, and Z person from, the community or whatever that's semi well known or whoever it is.
Absolutely. I think that's a great addition to event because then you can bring out content creators there. They can meet also people that might not have the opportunity to see the people that they watch on YouTube. I mean, us content creators, we build out content daily. People watch channels and see everything that you upload and get the opportunity to meet someone in person and then see them talk on a stage about a topic that you're passionate in. I think it's a missed opportunity on a lot of shows. I think it shows if you have at least 100 tables, you have enough of an audience there. Maybe have 1 or 2 different events and bring in a few people to have the show.
Yeah, that feels like a really untapped thing. I was glad to see maybe Atlanta starts a trend with that. I don't know. Space is always an issue on stuff like that. So,
Yeah,
so
another thing they did, I was gonna say another thing they did too, which I really like too, is they built out t-shirts for the event. I think that's a very untapped market as well. I mean, I know Dallas made t-shirts this time but a lot of other shows they never had any t-shirts. And I feel like a lot of people would go out there and buy shirts just to say, oh, I went to the Atlanta card show or oh, I went to the Dallas card show and wear them around.
nice. So not necessarily these two specific shows, but in general, like the last 30, 60, 90 days as you've been going to shows, have you seen, and I think you made this comment to me when we were talking on Instagram about that there's almost like 2 shows now inside every show. There's like the set of dealers that are willing to play at current comps, and there's the set of dealers that are still pricing things from like 90 days previous. Have you seen that trend shift at all? Like the longer that the slide has gone on, that it's starting, people are getting more realistic on pricing, or do you feel that it's still like, where do you put that split at people that are willing to play ball at current prices versus the people that are still trying to get, March, February, April prices?
I'd say it's slightly more people that are trying to work with you than not. But there's still a lot of dealers that don't want to take a loss, and I don't blame them, right? Like, let's say you're buying something at the peak and the thing already dropped 50% of value. It hurts losing money on that. And that's why they don't want to move those cards. And but the thing is, the buyers are a lot smarter now. In the past, buyers had to use a Beckett guide, and those don't change as often as they do now. Like, you have an app like with Sports Card Investors Market Movers, or you can go to 130 Point, or you can just even load up eBay. You get instant feedback. You can see what things are listed on at the current moment. And you go on eBay and say, oh, I can buy this card for $10 right now and get shipped to me. Why am I paying the seller $20 for this card? That's something that happened in Atlanta. There was a guy there that had a bunch of base cards of Jack Flaherty and Walker Buehler that I wanted. And I saw on eBay the last comps of them were selling for between $5 and $10, but they were marked as $25. So I tried making a deal on them. Lowest he would go to is $15 a card. Well, there's buy it nows for $5. I'm not going to pay $15 for a card. It makes no sense to me. I can get 3 online on eBay. I'll wait a week rather than that. I don't need the card right now. So I think as buyers become a lot smarter, dealers will have to be able to do that to liquidate their inventory. But there's a lot of dealers there that don't care about liquidating their inventory, especially on the vintage side. Like, if anything goes down, they're just going to hold it because vintage steadily goes up 10 to 15% every single year. There's only so many Mickey Mantle rookie cards or 52 Mantles out there. There's only so many Ty Cobbs or Walter Johnsons or Cy Youngs out there. It's not like modern production today where there's going to be those cards every single year. You have very limited tobacco cards with those, and even those are printed so low compared to the stuff today. So for them, they can hold on to the card. They don't need to sell it. But for your modern sellers where there's 50,000 of a card, you should be able to work with someone because you know you're going to be able to get that card in once again, whether someone walks in the show and is trying to sell it for you, or even just going on eBay and buying again for $5.
Yeah, there seems to be this weird push pull right now between current comps and people not wanting to take a loss on a card, which I get. But like, also, if you're set up at a show, and more specifically speaking, modern, I get the vintage side is kind of like a market inside the market. But on the modern side, I get not wanting to take the loss. But on the same side, like you said, buyers are smarter than they've probably ever been, and to expect to move that stuff, I don't know, unless you just have someone just walk in and not care, like a newbie or whatever. I just feel like it's so hard to move that stuff at even at. I mean, at comps you could probably get. I'd be perfectly fine even paying relatively close to comps, especially on a lower pop or maybe slightly more rare card. But like on a base Zion PSA 10 Prism, like everyone knows what that card goes for. I don't know. It just seems like there's a weird push pull right now between current comps and past comps and dealers that are willing to work and ones that aren't. So, do you have like, what do you like national prediction wise? Do you think it's going to be the same, like a 50-50 split on that? Or do you think it's going to, my thought is that it almost starts one way, like the first couple
Yeah.
days of the show, people are going to be a little more firm. And then as the show goes on, depending on what the cash flow is, maybe it shifts one direction or another. Like, do you have a feel for what you think the national is going to play out like?
Yeah, so I actually talked a little bit to Rich Klein about this. In 1991, there was a national that had over 100,000 people. This time, I think it's also going to have over 100,000 people just based on prediction of the hobby and where it's at, kind of paralleled back to the junk wax era. And for a seller, you're already paying $2,000 for that booth. I think everyone is going to go really sky high on their prices, like top eBay comps for the first few days. Sure, there's going to be deals in bargain bins, but if you're going for some of these main showcase slabs and other expensive and rare cards, I don't really think you're going to find a deal the first few days unless like someone just has it really, really low, or that dealer themselves and they're willing to work with you. Because there's so many people coming in, and the chances of them being able to sell it to one of 100,000 people is pretty high. I mean, there's stories of people going to national and they're wiping out a showcase because they have either buyers or they just really, really like cards and they have money to spend. They haven't been to a show in a while, especially not having a show in 2020. Some people, this is going to be their first show in maybe 2 years. They have a lot of money saved up. They're just going to go buy whatever. And especially if they're that new buyer, which we're talking about, the one that's not seasoned going to card shows all the time, they might not know and be as educated with current comps.
Yeah, and if it plays out that way, I could see that sticking. But I also feel like the reverse could happen, is if cash isn't flowing like people think it is, come Saturday or Sunday, it could be like Deal Central.
And I
If people
regret
are
that
like,
because I'm not going to be there Saturday or Sunday. I'm only going Thursday and Friday to the show. I'm going to do some B-roll those other days and go to Lollapalooza. So I'm probably shooting myself in the foot for that one, but we'll see what ends up happening.
I made sure to budget just enough. We're driving. I made sure to budget just enough time on Sunday that I'll be able to hit the show floor for at least an hour or two to like make some last minute stuff. Cause, I think if cash isn't flowing at the beginning, and I mean, I don't know, you'd have a better vibe of it from like, the various last couple Dallas shows, Dells, Atlanta, whatever. It feels like from the outside looking in that people are more looking to trade plus cash into stuff, not just straight buy. And
Yeah,
if I wonder if the national starts that way, it's nice for dealers to shuffle cards around, but ultimately, like you said, they have a $2,000 bill for the table, plus whatever travel expenses to get there, plus the time. Like they're ultimately going to want cash coming out of that show, not just new slabs that they shuffled around.
I agree with that aspect of things, and I think the trade plus cash really works out. I mean, that's a strategy I use a lot on my card shows because then the dealer gets some cash out of the card itself, and then they have another card, especially if it's like inventory that they've had in their showcase for a few different months. Something that I like to do. I mean, at the local shows, you see what someone has month after month. You've seen a slab there for 3 or 4 months. Talk to them. Hey, I've seen this slab here. It's literally getting dust here on your showcase. Let me trade you a card for it and some cash, and that way you can come out ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I see that too. Like I have two local shows, sometimes a third mixed into the mix. And it's the same thing. Like it's 70 to 80% of the same inventory. And then every once in a while, like some new stuff pops up and that's always refreshing. So from the dealer side of the table, I could see that definitely being a thing. And I wonder how much, a lot of people going, like we were talking about it beforehand, like there's almost a second show at every show with all these massive trade nights, whether it's in hotel lobbies or actual organized trade nights. Like I feel like you could probably go and just make no plays on the show floor and probably get what you want out of a trade night. Like Ryan at Card Collector 2 is putting on a massive trade night Thursday. There's a second trade night after that trade night that same night. Plus, essentially every hotel lobby is almost a trade night 24/7 during the entire convention. So that's like an interesting aspect of that too, of you could probably go and never actually go on the show floor and probably have a great time, at least something like the national specifically.
Yeah, I'll agree to that. I mean, I haven't been able to make any trades at a trade night yet, just because most of the people that are at trade night are mostly ultra modern. I see a lot of basketball there as well compared to baseball, which I really PC. I don't know much, if anything, about basketball cards, so I'm not going to dive into that market. But that's what I usually see at these trade nights. But being at the national and that you have this big diverse crowd of people going to these different trade nights, I'm really hoping I can make my first trade night deal. And I mean, again, numbers. If 100,000 people are going to these shows, if each of these trade nights can get 4 to 5,000 people, how many of those are going to bring vintage cards? How many of them are going to bring baseball? Some other sports that I collect as well. The chances are there. So just about networking and figuring out what people have those cards that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I know at least for one of the Dallas shows, I think someone organized like which is not my scene at all, but like there was like a soccer specific trade night like at a location where it was like, hey, the focus of this trade night is going to be soccer. And I'm sure that there'll probably be some little niches or corners of various hotel lobbies that probably segment themselves into like, oh, okay, all the vintage actions going on over there. Like this one's a little bit more baseball focused or whatever. So
Oh,
um,
absolutely. I think that definitely will happen. And I'm pretty sure soccer's doing that again. Didn't they just get a like superstar or something like that to go to the national? I saw it over
I
Twitter or
think
something.
so, but once again, I don't. You could throw soccer names at me, and I wouldn't even recognize most of them. So I could have seen it on Twitter or IG and like been like, oh, okay, I don't know who that is, but that's cool that another new person's going. Um, but yeah, so like there's that whole angle there of the trade night, and a lot of cash changes hands at those too. Like
It
I've
does.
done a couple of card collectors to shop trade nights, which are obviously a much smaller scale than going to a show. But even that, like, there's plenty of people that just walk into those just buying, and you'll if the show starts, the dealers are high. Most people at a trade night are usually fairly reasonable on cash offers. Like you could probably walk in with cash just to the trade night and just buy there, almost like it's the show floor, and not even have to. If the dealers aren't willing to work on the show floor, I think there'll be plenty of opportunities at the various trade situations around the national.
See, I need to try that. So that's gonna be a good opportunity to go around and see for any buying opportunities with that.
Yeah, I mean, I know even like I said at Ryan's, there'll be at least a handful of people that'll walk up and they'll just say like, "Hey, are you just looking to trade or are you selling too?" Because like I have cash and I'm looking to buy. And I'm usually most of the stuff I bring with me, like I'm usually willing to move it at like 75, 80, 85% eBay comps, depending on what it is. And most people buying in that situation are usually fairly willing, if you have something that they want, that they're usually, most people are more fair with each other. It feels like it's less adversarial when, instead of like a dealer buyer situation, when it's just two guys sitting at like a dinner table in a conference room.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait for that. I mean, there were probably thousands of people at that first trade night, and then
Uh,
all the guests that they're bringing in as well in the live stream.
yeah, I have a feeling that first trade night's probably going to be like the event. Um, and then just basically constant transactions in hallways pretty much every night. Like, uh, I know that. Have you done any of the ones in Dallas? Like, I know Dallas is pretty known for essentially, basically, like people trading at 3 a.m. in the hotel lobby of the
I have
Dallas show.
I honestly have not at Dallas. I mean, I've only stayed at the hotel once. I try to
Okay.
stay at a cheaper hotel or Airbnb it, and I have another friend that lives in Dallas, so to save some capital, sometimes I'll stay over at his place as well. I try to budget out all these different card shows rather than spending extra 150 $200 on a hotel.
Yeah, I mean that's all. If you could save money where you can, that's more money that you could throw at whatever card it is that you're looking for. So for you going into the national, and you don't have to give away any trade secrets, but do you have like a list of things you're specifically looking for, or are you going in more with the mindset of I'm looking for vintage and whatever deals I run into, cool? Or do you have, since it's the national and you can, what everyone says is find anything, do you have like a very specific, like I'm looking for like these three rare cards that I don't run into very often that I have a feeling will be there? Or is it a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B?
Kind of both. Like for on the baseball side of thing, there's probably 5 to 10 cards that are like under 100 pop that I'm looking for on the vintage side of things. I'm not 100% expecting them to see it at the national because what happens in vintage is a lot of people will find those cards and go, I'm not trading this, I'm not selling it, I'm just going to keep it in my collection. And that's one of the bad things about vintage, at least as like a buyer, is people are more of a collector mindset rather than the flipping mindset. So like with modern today, people will find a numbered card. Let's see, even if it's numbered to 25 or 50, they go, oh, if I bought this for $100, it goes for $200 next week. I'm going to sell it. But on the vintage side of things, if someone finds a deal on a card, let's say it's $100 card, and they buy it for 50, they're going to go, oh, sweet, I saved $50. They're going to put it in their closet and never put that card out again. And those pops, they just don't go out there. It's really hard to find some cards on eBay. So there's like probably 5 to 10 cards that I'm looking for just in the back of my mind. If I see them, I see them. If not, I'm not going to go to the show and say, dang, this national was horrible. But besides that, I'm going to be going around and looking for stuff. I mean, I collect now 4 or 5 different sports. So I'm trying to keep an open mind and look for key cards in the sports that I don't have. And even if I do have that card and I can find a deal on it, I might trade for that card or buy that card so then I can leverage it into another deal.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, on the card side, I mostly play in modern slash ultra modern, but I also am pretty heavily in the comic books as well. And that market to me reminds me more of the stories I hear from vintage. Like the comic book market is much more, there are certain things that once they go into people's hands, they just never see the light of day again. And even stuff that's like, in a CGC 98, which would be like a PSA 10 equivalent, like I have an X-Men book that might be, I forget what the CGC census on it is maybe like 250, which isn't like small, but it's not like a ton either. And I think it took me almost 3 or 4 months to find one. Like there was no sale. It was like 4 months without one selling on eBay or even popping up. And it's the same thing. People get them in their hands and it's like, okay, cool. Like this is going up on the wall behind me and it's never going to hit a marketplace again until, my kids sell it or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Cy Young that I picked up. Unless I have the opportunity to upgrade it, which even that's like one, it's really nice. There's like paper loss in the back, kind of hard to see.
But it
That's gonna be
presents
a lot.
super well.
Yeah, it just looks really nice. I'm most likely never gonna sell this card or trade it. I'm literally just gonna put it away and then look at it again in 10 or 15 years. I mean, I don't want to get rid of this card because it takes so long to find these, and Cy Young is one of the best names out there, and it's like a pop 250. So that type of things, I'm like that person. I'm just not gonna bring it out. Just hold on to it.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. Like some of the comic book stuff, I would like that X-Men book would be like one of the last things that and it's not even like that expensive of a thing. It's like maybe an $800 comic book, but it's like one of the last things that I would probably let go just because it took me forever to find it. I love it. Um, but to your point, ultra modern basketball, if I get into a card for 400 and then it's all of a sudden it's 600, I'm like, okay, cool, see ya. Like I know that I can
Exactly.
get that back.
It's almost like two different hobbies in a sense, but you kind of have to balance both. I know a lot of people just only focus on the modern side of things. Some people only focus on the vintage side. I kind of use the modern stuff to leverage to get into the vintage side. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and like you can leverage the ultra modern too because you could do the flip side to generate the profits to put back into vintage as well. Plus, I think a lot of people are more willing to move in and out of ultra modern because the prices fluctuate so quickly. Like there is a decent chance that you were talking Machado, he's a PC kind of for you, but just in general, like when he was one of the all-star players of the league, there's still a good chance that his stuff goes down within a year, even if he's playing extremely well. It's just kind of a nature of that market. Whereas vintage, like you said, that stuff's going to fluctuate a little bit, but in general, it's constantly trending upward. Modern, you don't see that. So if you can get in and get out and make your money, you could always have the opportunity. I feel like probably 99% of the modern cards, you probably have the opportunity to buy that card back cheaper somewhere down the line, with the exception of like LeBron, Brady, maybe
Well,
Trout. There's probably like two or three guys in every sport where you're not going to have that area of opportunity for. And even that's probably, you know, a stretch too. Like, look, even LeBron stuff got cheaper last year. You could have bought back in.
it did, yeah. So it's always fun though going after the best players modern wise. I mean, just diversify. Don't focus on one thing and only one thing. That market goes down, your whole collection is going to go down in value. And like even diversifying, don't put all your money into carts. Get stocks, eventually get some real estate, everything like that.
Yeah, this should really be not your primary. This should be fun money, fun investment, the side hustle, not your primary 401k slash whatever for retirement purposes. This should be the fun thing on the side that you could eventually turn into some stuff. You could obviously make real money doing it, but it's not the most stable thing in the world. That was part of the reason why I branched it to dive back in the comic books, was just I wanted to do something still in the collectibles market, but I wanted to get comic books are less volatile than the sports card market because, famously, as like the Card Talk pod guys say, like Pikachu can't tear an ACL, like Spider-Man's not tearing an ACL. So there's much higher floors there. It's a lot less likely that you're going to completely wash out on stuff. Same with vintage. There's probably a lot of similarities between collecting comic books, whether it's modern or vintage or older stuff, and the vintage market. It sounds like there's a lot of parallels there where your floors are extremely high. It's a much slower moving market going up in some cases, with a
It
lot
definitely
less
is.
risk overall.
That'd be a good video for you to make since you know both of them.
Well, I don't know vintage though, so
True.
that's
Well, if you
that's a
want to get
problem,
back,
and I don't have a ton of interest in it either. Really, like, sure, maybe at one point in time, would I like to have like a nice Jim Brown card, just for like a PC side of things? Sure, absolutely, but it's not like on my priority list of things, which I guess maybe it should be because it's not like that stuff's ever getting cheaper.
no, and the thing about Jim Brown too, it's so undervalued compared to the modern football stuff. I mean, you're talking about one of your top five players all time in football, and you look what his like 3 through 5 range goes for. Then you look at some of the ultra modern quarterbacks that aren't even like number one or two, and you can find some autograph cards that are more expensive than a Jim Brown rookie. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, plus he's all I mean, he's an iconic legend here. Obviously, he was in movies, like he had an acting career for a while there too. So he had like off the field stuff as well. Like and then there'd be some Indians guys that I would be interested in potentially picking up. Like Herb Score, maybe. I don't
Fellow,
know. I always liked him because had the broadcasting angle. He was the broadcaster that I grew up on. So to have like a nice card of his, or like a Bob Feller. I met Bob Feller a couple times when he was still alive, and I have multiple autographs from him. But like, I don't have any of his cards. I don't know what his market looks like, but like stuff like that for PC purposes, I wouldn't mind at one point in time diving into vintage. But to like move into it from more of like an investment slash moving in and out of an angle, I don't know that I would want to do it.
yeah, it's more stuff you just put away because you can't really day trade it like with other stuff.
Yeah, it's the slow burn versus the quick burn. Um, so circling back to the national, like, do you think that coming out of the national, like, do you think the national is going to influence the overall card? I guess speaking more to the modern side, I should be a little specific here. On the more modern side, do you think that it's going to move? Like, is it going to re-energize the market and things are going to kind of take back off again, or is it more just going to be like, okay, it was another really big show, some stuff happened, one or two players will probably come out more pumped than normal, like we've seen with Dallas shows over the last few times. You know, like KD was big coming out of one, LeBron was big coming out of one with Jordan. Um, like, do you think it's going to be this catalyst event to kind of like re-energize everything, or is it just going to be like a little speed bump on the road of the continuing marketplace?
I think it really depends on the sellers and the dealers at this time, because if the dealers are making a lot of plays that puts more cash in their wallet, and then they're going to go out there and buy more inventory, which is going to be on eBay or ComC or MySlabs, then those people that are selling cards on there are going to get more money and just going to trickle down to even like the smaller card shows, and everything to feel re-energized for a little bit until we get to this like stalemate once again where people are going to go, oh, this card was worth X amount of dollars, I'm not going to sell it. And it's just a continuous cycle of market will go down, market goes up, market goes down, up and down. But it just really depends on the dealers, because if the dealers aren't willing to work with people, then everyone's going to say, oh, the national was horrible. You know, I wasn't able to buy any cards there. And people are always going to talk about that. But if it was good, then people have new cards, dealers have money, and everyone's going to be really, really happy going outside that show right before your next fall run of shows, which Dallas is at the end of August. So it gives people a month to get prepared and ready for the next big show there.
Yeah, and the Nationals well timed too, because you're at like the prime tip off for wanting to buy football. It's going to be literally during the NBA draft, which is also when NBA offseason silliness starts. And um, I recorded a basketball video, and I talk about, like, the second Woj and Sham start dropping tweets about, X player getting traded to the Y team, you're going to start seeing prices spike up for that player and whatever team he went to that, now has a new co-star running mate or whatever. So that's going to start spiking the market there. So it could look like the Nationals causing the spike, but there's a lot of other things going on. And I do agree with you. I think a lot of it comes down to how willing are the buyers and sellers to meet in the middle and find a middle ground here. Because if, us as, part of the content creator community, there's going to be a billion videos coming out about the National, whether it's vlogs or roundtables or thoughts and opinions. If all of us talking heads are like what you just described, it sucked. Like, I made some deals, but the dealers weren't really working to work with us. They were still going off of comps, this, that, and the other thing. It's going to put that negative vibe out into the space, essentially. Whereas if it's the opposite and, stuff's going down, dealers are buying, they're getting cash back to sellers. Those sellers are taking that cash, moving on to the next table and buying stuff, and money's moving around the show. Then that vibe is going to come out of the content that comes out of the National. And that's going to go out to everyone that wasn't there. They're going to watch that. They're going to be like, oh, cool. Like, cards are picking back up again. Like, look at all this stuff that happened. That's going to make them feel better about going out into the marketplace as well. So I think it's in the dealer's best interest and the buyers. Like, there is a middle ground that has to be met there, but I think it is going to set the tone, good, bad, or indifferent. Whether it should or not, I don't know, but I feel like it's going to.
But another point I want to talk about, so I 100% agree with the content creators and everything like that, because that's how most people are going to be influenced. But it also depends too on the media coverage of the event. Or is all these different big national news stations going to go to the National itself and make content based around it, or is it only going to stay locally? Because if you get all these big media outlets, let's say your CNN, your Fox News, your ABC, talking about this huge card show that happened this year, then they're going to see even more excitement with that as well across the country.
That's true. I didn't really think about that. Like, this is the National. Like, is an ESPN reporter going to be there or something, or or even more mainstream than that, like a CNN business analyst or something like that, going to be on site to put some sort of coverage on this? You would think with the record Jordan sells and the $5 million plus this and that sale over the last 6 to 8 months, that would at least raise to somebody's level to want to send someone to this beyond just local Chicago media and like hobby content creators. But I haven't heard anything from that. Have you?
I have not. I think it's one of those things that they'll just show up and people are like, oh, the news stations are here. And if they are there, that's a good thing for the hobby, because now you're going to reach an even more bigger audience who might not know like how much money is into the card side of things. And someone watching the news might go, hey, I want to get into cards, and then start watching videos on YouTube about the National itself and get them engaged with the hobby.
Yeah, I know, like Bill Simmons was talking about going, which that's sports inside the sports bubble, but he's a lot big. You know what I mean? He has a huge audience, but I think latest I had heard on their podcast was that he might not be going now, but I think that would have been a big bump. I know a couple, Chris Vernon, who hosts a couple big NBA podcasts, is going. He said he's going. I don't know if Lefko's going from TNT. But even guys like that would, put a little bit of a different spotlight on it, just talking to more of a generally broad sports audience. But yeah, I agree with you. If there's like a CNN crew there or something, or a Fox Business or CNNBC or whoever, pick your your business media or business news channel of choice shows up there, I think that wouldn't be terrible for the hobby for sure. Any exposure is usually good exposure. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting national, especially as a first timer. Sounds like there's going to be a ton going on all
I,
over the
I
place.
I know, it kind of scares me though about the national. I wonder if they're going to stop people from going in, like if it hits capacity levels that we haven't seen before.
That's true too. I'm also waiting. I hesitate to even say this. I'm wondering if they're going to throw like a last minute mask mandate or something on, with depending on what Delta does
Okay.
the next
Yeah.
week and a half.
'Cause
Like,
then that'll cause a crazy thing around the hobby. Because then you have both sides of it. Oh, should I wear the mask? Should I not wear a mask? And you have people arguing. So not to
yeah,
do all that type of things with that. And then people are like,
yeah.
oh, are you vaccinated or are you not vaccinated? Show me your card, and just a
I
whole
don't think
mess
they'll go
with
down
that.
that path, but I could. I mean, maybe it's not even the Nationals' call. Like Illinois has been pretty strict on stuff. Like if all
Yeah.
of a sudden they're like, "Wait, this 100,000 person convention's coming to town," like
Well, that
does the
and
city or
Lollapalooza the
local
same
lay the law
weekend
down
too.
on that? What's that?
And Lollapalooza the same weekend as well. So you have two big events.
True. That's outdoors though, right? That's entirely
It is,
outdoors.
yeah.
I mean, that's a little bit of a different situation there. So, but yeah, in general, there will be a lot of people coming into the state from out of town. I don't know what does Lollapalooza still draw fairly large?
Yeah, I think it's also 100,000 plus at Lollapalooza.
Okay.
So the funny thing too, I know I talked about the media outlets, but another thing that will help influence the event, there's actually a lot of artists that are staying at Lollapalooza that collect cards. So obviously
Mm.
Aoki has his own card breaks. He's at Lollapalooza. You have Post Malone, who also is into cards. I've seen that on Twitter. He's headlining another day as well. So you're going to see both of them at the show. I'm sure there's other artists out there that collect that you'll probably see walking down through the national. They're like, do I recognize this person or not from their music? Pretty funny.
I didn't even think about that because yeah, there are a lot of people in the music industry that cross the streams there, and that would be very easy. I'm sure they have plenty of time to kill, and would be interested in heading down for that. So, we'll kind of start to wrap up on this. So you've been to a million shows so far this year. As myself personally, a first time going to the national, or just anyone else out there going to, whether it's a national or just any big show, any, like, everyone always says like the comfortable shoe thing, anything like more off the wall or that you could think of that like you never thought of before, and then all of a sudden you started going to these of like, man, I really wish I knew this 3 months ago to like bring X, Y, or Z thing, or whether it's budgeting time, just anything, any little tips or tricks that you want to throw out there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of events at the National. Make sure that you set your alarms and know when everything is. Another tip for people is if you see a card that you want to buy at the National, just buy it then, because you're going to get lost going through the floor. You might not remember where the dealer is, or someone might buy that card. Just buy it. Don't have any regrets, because if that card is gone, you're going to be kicking yourself for 2 or 3 days. Oh, I should have bought this card. I knew I should have bought this card. And you're going to feel bad about that over and over again. The shoes is an important thing because you don't realize how much walking that you end up doing through the floor. Another thing that's really important to know is like have prices on all the cards that you're bringing. Don't go out there and have to research every single card if you're trying to sell it to someone. Have a sheet already prepared, so that way when someone asks about a card, you can just look at your sheet. Oh, this is the price that I want on this card, and then they look it up and agree with you. Don't go on eBay or Market Movers or wherever else and just, oh, this is what my card value is, especially if you're only bringing less than 20 or 30 cards. One thing that I need to do a lot better is bring a portable charger, especially if you're on your phone a lot and your phone ends up dying with all these events. Not good. So make sure that you have that. Do bring some snacks as well, because you don't want to pay expensive convention food. I'm not too sure what's around the National, because one time I went, I stayed all day and didn't leave the building. And I was staying at downtown Chicago rather than at the center over
Mm.
there when I went in 2019. But do bring some snacks, because that'll save you some money. And if you're hungry in the middle of the day, you don't want to feel grumpy because of that. But those are the main things. If you're on the vintage side of things, buy a loop before you go there and make sure that you know what a card looks like. And I even say this, like, I messed up at my last Houston show and I trusted a dealer with a Royal Vintage card, a Duke Snyder rookie card. And I didn't take a look at it because this dealer has a ton of vintage cards that were graded. I knew the guy, the card ended up being trimmed, and I just got an A on it today. So make sure, even if you
Oh,
know even if you know the dealer themselves, sometimes they get cards from great customers, they don't check them, and then they get passed on to you. Not the dealer's fault. It might not even be the person that passed it off to the dealer. And some of these cards are 50, 60 years old, so you never know what happens to them. But do your homework and make sure to check the card. I took a loss today. I don't want anyone to do that as well. Same with like counterfeits as well. Make sure to look up any counterfeits on cards that are going around. There's some Kobe autographs that were passed around at the Dallas card show. I have a full video on that. There's other Kobe autographs that are being passed around. There's a ton of fake. Also, LeBron's. Never buy a Jordan Raw because majority of those are fake. Just do your research before you go out there and make a big purchase. And with the PSA slabs.
Yeah, for sure. Because definitely fake slabs are on the rise. We've seen it with BGS, PSA. You mentioned the portable battery charger. The last 2 Amazon deliveries to my house were a portable battery charger and a new one because I didn't have one prior, and I wanted one, and I just got, which I mentioned this beforehand, a compact extension cord that has like 3 plugs and 3 USB ports on it, but it's only about this big because I just have a feeling at some point in time that's going to come in handy. I don't know when and I don't know where, but I have a feeling it's going to come in clutch at least once. Maybe that's more of a me thing or an us thing because we're content creators, so we're thinking a little bit more. But I think the battery charger thing is one that everyone should probably have handy.
Absolutely.
How's the internet typically in there? I assume terrible or drastically
so
unreliable.
I wouldn't trust card show internet. That's why I say write down your prices because you can't expect to go online, especially with so many people in one small area. Good luck with that Wi-Fi.
And on the flip side of that, I would say if there's certain cards you're looking for, make sure you know the prices going in, so you don't have to sit there and look up a comp while you're at a table. Like if you're looking for whatever Luca, whatever PSA 10 parallel, know like, okay, this is the range that card should be versus trying to figure it out while you're there if internet's not working right, especially if it's something lower pop or maybe doesn't have a lot of comps. Like do your research on that prior to, if you know that there's a card you're specifically looking for like that. I know myself personally, I got like the little thing of sticky notes. I'm just going to put it on the back of my slabs that I'm taking with prices on it.
Perfect with that one. I like that idea. I'll just say one last thing I didn't really talk about. If you only can go to the National one day and you haven't gone, treat it as a museum at first. Like if you find a card, obviously buy it, but walk around the aisles and make sure you see everything because there's a lot of cards, a lot of pieces of history that you're not going to be able to see again because they might be bought, put into personal collections. And just treat it like that. Like I'm sure I thought I saw on Twitter that there's going to be a Hannes Wagner T206 there. There's so few of those out there. Make sure you check that out. Don't skip that and say, oh, I don't want to see this. There's a 5 or 10 minute wait. Just wait in the line because you might not ever see that card again. So just walk around the show, see what's in all these different people's booths, and spend some time with that. That's the first thing I did in 2019 when I went to the first one because I didn't know I was going to be a content creator a few years later. I went to the show. I was like, all right, this is going to be my probably first national. I probably won't be back here for another 10 or 15 years. Let me treat it as a museum. And I did that for the first hour or two. I walked around. I saw everything that were on the displays. I admired it. Of course, I didn't really collect as much pre-war as I do today, but I still looked at the stuff and was amazed with what the dealers had. So treat the show like that. Go around, see the unique pieces, and just enjoy it.
Yeah, that's an interesting take for if you're only going for one day to take it in. Don't worry so much. You can always find the card most likely, especially if it's something modern. You'll be able to find it somewhere. So go see the stuff that you might literally never see again.
Exactly. And have fun with it. I mean, if you also see some of your content creators out there that you watch, ask to take a picture or ask to talk to them for 5 or 10 minutes. If they're a good person, they're going to talk to you and just enjoy the moment there. I mean, you watch their videos online, they should be able to at least give you a few minutes of their time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to anyone that wants to come. I've already had a lot of people reach out to say like, hey, like, are you going to be there? Do you know where you're going to be? And a lot of it's like, no, I don't know where I'm going to be, but I will be there. So feel free if you see me to come up and say hi or whatever. The only thing that I know I'll be at is Card Collector 2's trade night is the only thing that I am confirmed for because I'm trying to leave things as open as possible to not get pulled in a million different directions.
And that one's going to be crazy with how many people are there. So good luck.
Yes, I'm very glad that I decided to get there on Thursday. So I will be there for that.
It's the same here. Because I was like, I'm just going to go Friday. And then I decided, I'm going to go Thursday instead earlier. And everything started happening Thursday. I was like, thank God, man.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and wrap up on that. Ryan, I'll throw it back to you one last time just to tell people where you're at. And if you want to highlight your, I mentioned it earlier, the Dallas, Atlanta video that you did and anything else that you want to shout out or any content that you have coming up.
Yeah. So guys, if you want to check out my channel, it is Breakout Cards. So I try to upload multiple times a week. But the main staples of my channel is the vlogs where I go to different card shows across the country. I have all these states which I'm going to be going to this year. Eventually, I want to hit up all 50 states. Didn't really show that well, but eventually, I want to hit up all 50 states and be one of the first content creators to do that as well, to show the different scenes across the country. So check out my channel for that. Last weekend, I did both Dallas and Atlanta. Ton of time editing the video, 15 hours or so on top of traveling. I literally went from work Friday night, went to the shows Saturday, Sunday, got back, went to work Monday, edited till 2 o'clock in the morning, went to work Tuesday, edited again till pretty much that. So it's a lot of work putting in this stuff. So if you have a few minutes, just go to my channel, make sure to watch a video. If you like it, subscribe. If not, no worries. And then this weekend, Iowa, following weekend, it is the national, and I can't wait.
Yeah, and I don't, I've only done a couple vlog style videos, and I don't take it to the same extreme that you do, but I could definitely speak to, even on a limited level, the how much different it is editing a vlog style video compared to my normal daily content, and like the amount of time that I put into one vlog video that was 15 minutes long compared to a 15-minute long video that I normally post. It is a whole different ball game, on a completely different level. It is a completely different skill set almost to weave that stuff together. And that's part of the reason why I don't do them that often, because it is a ton of work and I'm not fantastic at it. So kudos to you for putting that time and effort in, because I know, like I said, even in the limited stuff that I do, how much time and effort that takes to make that turn out the way that you want it to turn out. So
It's a ton, especially when you're trying to like locate the story that you're trying to build out and then just splicing everything. You end up splicing over 300 clips, making sure the audio is synced, adding all the effects. It takes a long time.
yeah, and I hate dealing with audio stuff. That's my biggest. Audio is the bane of my existence. So that's all we got for you guys and girls today. So if you see me and Ryan at the National, come up, say hi, say hello. We'll probably both be at Card Collector 2's trade night and roaming the show floor. And we'll catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.
See you guys there.